Now, I know some of you don't see too many water pumps. Some of you probably see a lot of water pumps. I'm in Virginia Beach. We had a period in Virginia Beach about 30 years ago where you had to get a special permit to get a water pump put in for anything other than domestic water. And you would see signs all over people's houses that would say yard pumps. It would be in the front yard because we were trying to get water. It's amazing. Virginia Beach has got water all around it, and we didn't have any to drink. So a lot of our water comes from Lake Gaston, which is over 100 miles from where I am now. And then and some of it actually comes from Appomattox. But like I said, we got the whole Atlantic Ocean, and desalination is it's just too expensive. But anyway, getting back to the pumps, normally what you're going to see out in the field are going to be probably jet pumps, or you're going to see the devices that let you know that there's a submersible pump there. Now, we we break our jet pumps down more or less into two types of pumps: shallow well and deep well. I get asked sometimes, well, what's the difference? You can drill a hole in the earth 75 feet. And what we look for is the static pressure that pushes the water up toward the surface. And if it's within 25 feet of the surface, that's considered a shallow well. Even though the line might be down there quite a bit, the static pressure is pushing it up. If it's below that, typically we're going to call it a deep well. And so we've got a few options. One of the main things that, of course, we're going to be concerned with is how much water do we need? What type of pressure do we have to have? All that kind of stuff. And I just threw some of these in here, and I was looking at them and noticed some of these things have changed, quite a bit with all the water saving devices and stuff like that we have. I know we knocked showers and bathtubs down and so forth. But anyway, on a shallow well pump, the working mechanism, the thing that does the trick, is right there. You got a pump connected to all this, and in that area, you got an impeller, a venturi, a diffuser. And if you notice off to the right side there, it says 1.25 inches. And what a lot of the pumps were originally were 1.25 inch pumps. And they worked fine. I mean, we used to have them on houses around here in Virginia Beach back in the 70s when I first got started in the business. You walk into the garage or somewhere, they'd have a pump sitting there, 1.25 inch line. You could trace it all the way out in the yard, and again, 1.25 inch, a line even going into the earth. Later, we changed that. We started doing a minimum of a 2-inch well, even if we were going to use a shallow well pump. And one of the reasons was it gives you an extra option. If for some reason you need to become a deep well, you can actually take a 2-inch line and insert the mechanism into the single pipe itself. And I'll hopefully be clear here when I show you, what it looks like. Here again are the three types of pumps: shallow well jet pump, deep well jet pump, and then submersible. All right, a deep well. I just mentioned the shallow well has all the working mechanisms. It does gets the water out of the earth. It's pretty much on the pump. Whereas a deep well, it takes that part of the pump off and inserts it. It inserts it in the well. This particular one here shows that front end of that pump is down into probably a 4-inch well here. And by putting it in the water like that, it doesn't have to work as hard to get that water up and out of the earth. So you'll see the first thing you would notice when you walk up to these pumps is you'll have two pipes coming off the front of the pump. It would be right here. And some of these pumps are actually made so you can attach an assembly onto the end of this, or we can put portions of it down into the well. So this could be made into a shallow well pump, but it could be working as a deep well pump also. So you got two pipes coming off of it. The two pipes will either go to the guy on the right, we just kind of looked at on that slide, where the whole mechanism is down into the earth, and then the guy on the left. Now the one on the left is actually a 2-inch well, and we insert a pipe with the mechanisms. Your venturi and all that stuff is on the end of it. We insert it in that 2-inch well pipe. It'll fit down into the pipe. So if you started out with a shallow well pump, but it was deep enough, and then you were having some issues, a lot of guys would just convert them over to this other pump because they got a 2-inch well there. Um, we usually call that a Packard system. It goes down deep into the, put it down into the water, and we have to seal it. We have to seal the intake area from the pumping area above it. And what we do is we actually put that inside the pump or inside the pipe, the well, and we tighten it up. And what it does is that where that brown arrow is, it compresses some leather washers, and the washers compress there and seal it off between, below that into the well and above that. So the beauty of it, like I said, is you can convert it if you have problems with your original system. So that kind of makes it nice and gives you, at least gives you that option. Some of you might live in an area, all they do is like 4-inch wells. You'll have 4-inch well out there, and in 4-inch well, you could do the deep well system like I've show here, or of course you could put a submersible pump in there. The one thing you'll see on the 2-pipe system near the pump that you won't see on a submersible system will be that there's no tank or there's no pump and tank together on the submersible. The pump is in the well on a submersible. Whereas this kind of looks like your regular old yard pump or something. There's a pump sitting there, but it does have 2 pipes taking off of it. And it's very close, usually very close to your pump tank, your pressure tank itself. The 2-pipe works this way. If you kind of look at my little animation here, you can actually take a garden hose. If you have city water on the house, you can actually take a garden hose, connect it to the pump, and force pressure down through the line, the one that's going down, and it'll go right back up and into the pump. It'll go back up out of the earth and over to the pump. And when you do it like this, it actually primes the pump. And you just turn the pump on when this is happening, and eventually you'll realize the pump's pumping itself. You don't have to have it tied into the house side at all. It'll just go ahead and pump. This is really nice for people when they're priming pumps. On shallow well, you normally are pouring water into the top of the pump, as you're tightening the little plug, you're seeing air bubbles coming out and all that. Whereas this one, like I said, if you can get some pressure through it, and a lot of well guys have extra pumps with water tanks on their truck, and they can just go ahead and prime this puppy pretty quickly. But again, all that you see there, it's in the well, it's in the water, it's down in the water itself. The 2-pipe that I mentioned, or excuse me, the 1-pipe is this guy here. Now it's a little compact, kind of hard to see. But what this thing does is the pipe goes into the other pipe, which is the well, and around the ring of it, the inside pipe is smaller than the outside pipe, and water actually goes down and through the mechanism. It basically does the same job as the other one that I just showed you, but it does it in a more compact location. And again, gives you that ability to use a 2-inch well also. That begins to actually pour water up through. Right above that arrow, you can see a little flat surface. That's the check valve, or the basically a foot valve or a check valve that will keep the water from going back into the earth when the pump cuts off. But those are the leathers that I was talking about earlier, the washers that are on there, and you're usually leather. You tighten it up, they expand to the side wall, and they separate the incoming water from the discharging water, where you won't have it mix and just constantly lose your prime. So you're going to be looking at a shallow well pump's going to have one line coming off the intake side, and again, the well could be pretty deep, but the water, if the water's within 25 feet of the surface, usually that's usually what we'll classify a shallow well pump as. Whereas if you see 2 pipes going off of it, that may be there because they need a little more water, but it may be coming there because the water is deeper, and you need to get down there into it in order to get to that. Now, you're not going to look at the pump and be able to tell whether it's got that Packard system or the 2-pipe system. You really have to be on top of the wellhead and everything to see that. You're not going to be able to see it this way. Submersible pumps, like I said, we put the whole pump in there. We hang it in there on pipes. We got a wire attached to it, a steel type wire, something attached to it, so that the plumbing doesn't support the pipe. It's actually hanging from a wire. The electric line goes down into the pump, and all this goes down, and we get it in the water. And if you ever have to work on it, it's got to come out. So you got that wire that holds it in place. You would have to disconnect it from the plumbing, and you would have to pull up on that wire and bring it out. Back in the day, we used to have to unscrew 20 or 21-foot sections of pipe as we brought it up out of the well. I've done a few over the years where we had to pull them up out of the earth. That black thing you see there, that is not a check valve. It's not really a pump mechanism at all. Or a pumping mechanism. It's a device that when it goes into the well, it expands out. We tighten it up and get it to expand out so that it holds the pump pretty sturdy in that 4-inch line. Because when that pump takes off, it'll jerk. It'll try to take off running, and it'll jerk, and it possibly could unscrew itself. It could also, break a line or something like that. So that kind of helps hold it. It's a way to seal it into the wall of the pump. So what do you normally see with a submersible? You see the pump tank. A lot of times you'll see the components, maybe a pressure gauge. Occasionally there'll be a relief valve, so that if the pump fails to shut off, it'll relieve when you got really super high pressure on it, keep it from blowing up your plumbing or damaging your tank. But they're usually in a pump house. Some of these are in a basement. You just see, again, you don't see the pump. You just see that particular one. The incoming line to the tank is probably going to be a pretty good size, at least a 1-inch, maybe larger. And we put these in a lot of places where we just need a lot of water. Again, it could be a deep well type situation as well, but these things are going to deliver you a lot of water. And what you see above the earth is, in many cases, is this situation here. You would actually take that cap off, and you would disconnect everything and bring that cable up to get that pump out of the well. Some of you guys, though, I know they put the concrete pipe and stuff around and put a lid on it. There's different ways, but generally, I'm telling you what I see here in my area. We don't see too many pipes open in the air like that. We see this, it's all sealed in nice and neat. You don't want debris to get down into that line and contaminate the earth, and which could contaminate your drinking water and so forth. The pumps themselves are usually pretty narrow. I mean, they'll fit right in there. The motor is on the bottom portion. You'll see that little stainless steel stuff there at the bottom. That's the motor. And the line, the electrical line, will come down, and it will attach to a connection for the motor. And if you see the little sections that look kind of like donuts stacked up on top of each other, you can build the pump, make the pump better or more powerful by putting these sections together this way. Sometimes you don't need but a few sections. You won't need a lot of sections, but sometimes you will. And so when you go to spec out what you want, it's usually going to come from the factory already done for you, but we're adding sections, and that's bringing that, it's able to pump that water out. It doesn't really have to do a whole lot of pumping inward, but it's putting that water out. And, these are used a lot, like on golf courses and stuff like that, because they need a lot of water. And, they'll put these guys out. But you do see them, quite a few of them on houses. Once you get away from where I am, and we do have submersibles, and primarily for the volume of water. But once you get away from this area, I would say, you get away from the ocean, submersible pumps are probably what you're going to primarily see out here. Again, being in the ocean, the water, I mean, I used to have a well in my yard. Honest to God, it was pulling water from 12 feet down into the earth. Had plenty of water. You couldn't drink it. It was horrible. It was probably getting some of the septic tank water in it. That's how shallow it was. But it would actually give you water. It would be wet, but it just wasn't. It wasn't a very deep situation. And one little thing before I wrap up, a lot of times I'll say, well, we put a well in, and we were drawing water at the ocean front, because we have older houses and sections of Virginia Beach that were actually right on the water, and then they had a well. That's really tricky. A well guy working down there would would probably know how deep he's going to have to go, and he usually has to go pretty deep because you can get a well there and end up with brackish water. And you could also, find yourself in a situation where you could be drawing in some sand or something like that and could damage the equipment. But I've seen a lot of wells that when they failed because we realized the water was getting salty and and so forth. So once you get away from the beach or something, I'm sitting about 4 miles from the ocean front right now, or somewhere in that area, and you get out here, everything's fine. But right down on the ocean front, it is amazing how sometimes you don't get the well just right, you get salt water. Today, we probably put in more wells in some areas for geothermal systems, and really the water to air systems. I call it a poor man's geothermal. It takes water out of the earth, runs it through the heat exchanger, and then puts it back into the earth. And a lot of well guys would probably be out of business if it wasn't for the fact that geothermals is kicked in pretty big, and they need the guys for that, because when they started putting city water on everything, that was it. A lot of these guys didn't have a whole lot to do, but several of them became good companies to go to for geothermal systems and all. So I hope that just gives you a little bit of information so you kind of know how they work. And again, shallow well pump 25. The water's 25 within 25 feet of the surface or less. A deep well gets below that. A single pipe going into the earth will, if you see the pump right there, the pump got the pipe off of it. It's probably a very shallow well pump. They get used a lot in areas that can operate that way and don't need a lot of water. Maybe they're just going to water their lawn or something like that. But they will work on a house. It's just, most guys go a little more into it nowadays. Originally, these pumps came set up, pressure tanks came set up for a 20-pound cut on and a 40-pound cut off. Most of them today you see will come for a 30-pound cut on and a 50-pound cut off. And most people are perfectly fine with that. We don't have a whole lot of complaints. Once you live with one a little bit, you just don't really think anything of it.